We're back, guys. Hey, what's up? It's Z-Dub Sports Nation here, and we got another video coming at you, and we're back here for the upcoming college basketball season.
Yeah, we've had a long time away. We're back for good now. We got a whole season ahead of us. The AP poll dropped, and so you know what that means. We only got 3 weeks to the regular season.
It's coming around the corner, Zach. Everyone's getting excited. The fever's in the air.
It is. It is. Now, this is where every fan base, no matter who you guys are a fan of, I'm sure you guys, maybe it's a little delusional hype for your team. Maybe it's justified, but I'm sure I know I'm hyped for some of my teams, Illinois and Kansas specifically. But it's going to be a fun season.
Some teams got to spend the off season living the dream. They got to celebrate it. Fan bases did.
It's true.
Talking specifically the Kansas Jayhawks. You know, if you follow our show, we're big Kansas guys. So that was fun.
It was fun. What a comeback that was. 15 points down at half.
If you guys could have had a camera on Zach and I throughout that game, that would have been interesting.
It was a roller coaster of emotions.
The worst half of basketball Kansas has ever played, and then one of the better halves they played.
It was. It was a special game.
That was fun. But that's last year's business, and it's a new year, new teams, new hype.
New hype.
And with that, we are going to share with you the AP poll that came out recently, like yesterday, I think, Zach.
Yeah, just yesterday.
There's an ad for us. But here's our poll, guys. Let's start with, I want to start with the teams out of it right now. Is there any teams that stick out to you off that right there?
The team that I see that I'm most excited for is Xavier. I think with Sean Miller returning to Xavier after, going to Arizona for a long time and then being out of coaching for a little bit. Now he's back at Xavier. I think that team is going to be fun to watch. That's a Xavier team that was ranked in the top 25 for like 3 months of the season last year, or at least the first 2 months. Then they had that epic collapse, found themselves out of the tournament, but they ended up going on a hot streak and winning the NIT. So I think winning the NIT for them is going to be huge. It's a confidence booster. They bring back a lot of guys. I think they only lose Paul Scruggs. I like Xavier as my team. I think can do a lot of damage that isn't in the top 25 right now.
I like Florida sitting there, Zach. There's something I've seen. I looked at their roster, some of the names, some of the transfers they got coming in, and then guys that got returning. I think Florida could be a team that could sneak up on some people throughout the year.
I could see that too. Florida's got a good roster.
But let's look at the top 25, and sitting at number 25 is the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They've lost some pieces, Zach.
They have. They've lost a lot of pieces. I can only think of one returning starter from that team, Kevin O'Banner, the Oral Roberts guy from a couple of years ago. But they also have some couple of guys that were depth pieces that'll be in more significant roles. But the thing I have to say about Texas Tech, though, is they are like at 25 here. They are always underrated to start a year.
They're going to find a way.
They're going to find a way. The way they're coached, the way they play. I can almost guarantee you, and I think you're on the same page, that this Texas Tech team will most certainly finish above top 25.
Yeah, they're going to find a way. They're going to hang around. They're going to be a good team, and they'll be a team that will get some outside conversation come March. They always are. They always do. That's just the Texas Tech way.
It is. It's good defense. And to mention, like, Davion Harmon transferred in, and they got good transfers. So they have a good team mixed with that style of play. I like Texas Tech this year.
24, we got the Dayton Flyers sitting there, Zach. What do you think about Dayton this year?
I think the biggest thing about Dayton is how much they returned from last year's team. It's a team that brings back, like, I think 95% of the minutes played. And they're easily the favorite to win the Atlantic 10. I think if you're a Dayton Flyer fan, this is exciting times. Maybe you can have a season like the COVID year where you guys can find a way to get into like a top 2 seed.
Potential damage sitting there with that team.
It's one of the best mid majors in the nation this year, and they're going to be fun. I like their spot at 24. I think that's a good fair spot for them to start the year.
Sitting 23, we got the Illinois Illini. Zach, your team here. Give me your thoughts on Illinois coming into the season here.
There's some unknowns with Illinois this year. We don't bring back a lot of production from last year, at least in terms of minutes played from last year's team. But we bring in some transfers, things like, we get some transfers, Terrence Shannon, Meyer from Baylor. But it's a lot of unknown at this Illinois team. So I think it's fair. I think we have the potential to do something great this year, but I also think there's a potential to maybe not live up to this 23rd.
Illinois is the great unknown.
They are.
You don't know what they're going to be. I think it's a good spot to place them. There's room for them to grow. There's room for them to rise. It's bold to put them ahead of where they are right now because you just don't know what they're going to be.
You don't. There's so many guys. Like if guys make those sophomore leaps that you see a lot of years from like guys like RJ Melinda, Luke Goody, then maybe this is a really good team. But that's a lot of the Big Ten this year. It's a lot of unknowns.
It's wide open.
It's wide open. You could tell me, you could make an argument for eight teams right now that can win the Big Ten, and I could hear that argument.
Next, sitting there at 22 is the Michigan Wolverines, another Big Ten team. We talked about how open the Big Ten is. There sits Michigan again.
In a similar spot as Illinois is, honestly. The only big thing and something that Will was really excited about was when Hunter Dickinson decided to come back.
It's a difference maker, I think, for that team.
It gives them when you're having a bad game, when you have a guy who's been there and you can just throw the ball down to him and get a bucket, that's going to really, without him, they're probably not in the top 25, but with him returning, this Michigan team, they got a lot of transfers, unknown pieces, a couple 5-star, at least one 5-star that I can think of that they picked up that'll probably be in the starting five. But it's a good Michigan team. Similar reasoning behind Illinois spot. They could easily finish way better. It's just unknowns.
Unknown. Oregon sitting there at 21, sitting in the Pac-12. What do you think about Oregon this year, Zach?
It's gonna be a bounce back year for Oregon.
Yeah,
they were really underwhelming last year. I expected a lot more out of Oregon last year, but Dana Altman's a good coach. I think they are gonna do much better than last year, and they'll definitely see themselves in the tournament, which was crazy not to have them in the tournament last year.
For sure. Sitting at 20, after such a promising start to last year, Alabama kind of disappointed towards the end.
They did.
And now they're sitting to start this year at 20. Nate Oates has a fairly new crop here. What are your thoughts on Alabama?
He does. This Alabama team. They didn't bring back a lot. They brought back, I think, Quinterly.
Coming off the bench of that one projection we were reading.
Yeah, I think Quinterly's going to come off the bench, and then I think Gurley. They're big for Bama. But other than that, it's going to be a new starting five, I think, overall. But we both think Nate Oates is a fantastic coach, and it feels to me maybe a little high for Bama, but I'll be excited to watch them though because they play fast, fun. They shoot a ton of threes, so it'll be fun.
It's going to be interesting. They're always fun.
They are.
Sitting at 19, we've got the San Diego State Aztecs. Speaking of fun, they are not it. They aren't fun. They dogfight out games, but they're a good team.
It's true. It's true. If you want to watch if you like games that can barely get to 60 points, watch San Diego State again this year. I mean, you guys know, you guys are college basketball fans. You know what San Diego State's about. It's pretty ugly at times.
It's not fun to watch.
It's not.
But they're a good basketball team.
They're good. And they brought back, speaking of Dayton's, this is another mid-major school like Dayton that brings back almost the entire roster. And they brought back Matt Bradley Jr., one of the Mountain West best players, and really one of the best players actually, in the country when it comes to just ISO ball and getting you a bucket. And so that San Diego State team, very good. A lot of promise out of them.
18, we got the Virginia Cavaliers. Zach, I know they're a team you're high on this year.
They are. They bring back a ton of guys, and after having a bit of a down year last year, I think Virginia's back to being relevant, back to playing Virginia style of ball, getting back to that classic pack line defense that they're famous for. So I like that for them at 18.
17, the Arizona Wildcats. Quite a bit of turnover there. They lost three best players, would you say?
They did. They lost Matherin to the Pacers at number 6 pick of the draft, and Terry to the Bulls at 18th pick, and then Koloko as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Toronto.
That's tough to replace that. But they did a pretty good job of getting Courtney Ramey in the transfer portal, Umar Balla backup. So Arizona is one of those teams. They have a lot of potential, but it's gonna be tough to replace that.
They look like.
But I like their ranking. Do you like them at 17?
It fits. It fits. I think there's a little more potential than in Illinois, which is why I see them sitting there. But again, there's an unknown. You don't know what it's going to be. You don't know what this team is actually going to end up looking like. But I think 17 fits for where they're situated right now.
I do too. 16,
we got the Villanova Wildcats sitting there. Villanova coming off of a Final Four appearance last year.
Yeah.
Where it was credit to them. They made it there last year. There was a separation in class once that game got going, but I'll admit when I was wrong. I was not high on Villanova last year, and they made it to the Final Four. What does this team have this year, Zach?
It's going to be interesting because, Villanova's kind of known for that classic brand of it's tough, gritty basketball.
Yeah.
And they had that under Jay Wright. Now with Kyle Neptune, their new head coach, with Jay Wright's shocking decision to retire, I think they'll probably maintain that culture of tough, gritty basketball. But I think 16 it fits for them. And they're obviously gonna be one of the favorites for the Big East. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see what Cal Neptune can do with this squad.
They're gonna be tough in the Big East. Creighton's gonna be good this year, but
the Big East is interesting this year.
It'll be good. 15, we got the Auburn Tigers. Last year, Auburn was highly ranked for a lot of the year. They got a lot of national conversations. We on Z-Dub, we thought a little bit different of them, and a lot it showed in the tournament. But what does this Auburn team have this year to make? Do they have something to make you think otherwise?
I think the thing, if Auburn's going to impress me this year, which, and if anybody remembers what I said about Auburn from last year, it's their guard play was incredibly shaky.
Yeah.
I think Wendell Green, KD Johnson, they have to make a leap. They have to make a leap if this Auburn team wants to go on like a Final Four type of season this year. They got to get better but I love their 3 through 5 though. I really do. Flanagan, they brought in the Morehead State transfer, Johnny Broome, I believe. I like their bigs. I like their forwards. Just got to improve guard play. Improve guard play. This Auburn team has a ton of potential. That's what it comes down to.
I mean, they're obviously missing Jabari Smith. They don't have that it factor that they had last year. It's definitely going to have to be more of a 5-man unit, pull it all together, get going.
More well-rounded this year's team. It does. It's got to be a lot more well-rounded.
We'll see what Auburn is. TCU sitting at 14. Zach, you love TCU this year.
I'm so excited about TCU this year. I mean, TCU was maybe a fumble, a missed dribble it off his foot type of play, in the tournament of making maybe a run last year.
People feel it was a foul. There is controversy there at that play.
It's true.
That TCU team could have done some damage.
They could have. They really could have. And this year, they brought back everybody, Will.
Yeah.
They brought back everybody from this team. This TCU team, who knows? They might win the Big 12 this year. I mean, that's a tough task. We all know how tough it is, but
it's plausible.
I like them at 14, and I could see an argument if they would have put them in the top 10, 11 range. I could have saw that for TCU.
They started to cook with some gas last year towards the end. You mentioned they almost beat Arizona in that tournament. They're a good team, and they got the ball rolling. I predict that TCU is going to keep it rolling, and they're going to be fighting up there with Kansas and Baylor towards the end of the Big 12
I think so too. Big 12 is going to be so crazy stacked with talent.
Sitting at 13 is Indiana, and this was a team, Zach, would I be bold to say this is your overrank on the AP? This is the highest overranked team?
It is. This really is the most overranked team. And it's not because I don't think they have the potential to. Bringing back Trace Jackson Davis, getting Trace Jackson Davis to come back was huge. But I think this Indiana team, though, it's kind of like Big Ten as a whole. I think we saw Indiana show spurts of good basketball last year, and they end up sneaking in the tournament, and getting in the first 4, beating Wyoming. But as of now, I think it's a bit of an overranking. I think it's a little bit of preseason hype building because this is Indiana's best team in years.
This is all the AP poll is preseason hype. Who's got the most preseason hype?
And so I think they're the ones that have benefited maybe the most from some maybe unjustified preseason hype. But when you bring back a Big Ten Player of the Year caliber player like Trace Jackson Davis, and then you return most of your other starters, I get why they did it. I'm excited to see them play. But maybe a bit of an overranking. I could have liked them more in like the 17, 18 range.
Sitting at 11, we got the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee, what are they going to be this year, Zach?
Tennessee underperformed in the tournament again.
Yeah, again.
Part of me thinks it's going to be. I like them at 11. I think the talent's there for number 11 in the country. But I think we're probably going to see the exact same story play out that we see most years.
They'll compete near the top of the SEC. Start to get some hype towards the end, and then you flame out kind of
flame out the tournament. I mean, until that pattern gets broken, and maybe this is the year, but this is the pattern for Tennessee and I would love to see Tennessee break through. But until we see that, I don't think we will.
It's tough to start predicting that it's going to happen. Sitting at 10 is the Arkansas Razorbacks, and Zach, you and I we've had some conversations since we saw this originally released about where Arkansas sits. I don't know what to make of Arkansas this year. They have great potential to be a national champion caliber team come March. but there's new faces, there's a lot of changeover. Can it all gel together?
That's the thing. This team is it. If it all gels together right,
Yeah,
national championship.
it's got that potential to win the Natty. It's that simple. They have that potential.
They do. Nick Smith. I mean, that's gonna be he's gonna be a lottery pick without a doubt for Arkansas. I think they bring in 2 or 3 5 stars, a ton of transfers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're gonna have maybe I don't know if they're gonna have a single starter from last year return to this team because I know Note and Jalen Williams are gone and Mude's gone. So I think this is gonna be a brand new team.
Yeah.
But who I believe in the most of almost anybody is Eric Musselman. You know, he's one of the best coaches there is.
Must bus.
The must bus, baby.
Yeah.
He's gonna get this thing. It might start slow. And I'll accept like it might start slow.
Gonna take some time. I said to Zach before we started recording it, I compared, is this Arkansas team similar to last year's Texas, where there's a lot of new faces, a lot had to kind of gel together, and then it was kind of a just wait and see what they are at the end of the year.
Yeah. And it's a fair comparison. Because this is a ton of transfers. I think the thing that might give them a slight edge over that Texas team will be is if Nick Smith and the other new freshmen coming in, if they live up to these expectations, I think that could be the X factor that takes them maybe to a little step further than Texas, who had a great year last year.
Yeah. 9, we got the Creighton Blue Jays. I like Creighton this year, Zach. Creighton, you could argue Creighton was Kansas's toughest fight in that tournament. They battled Kansas hard, and with a healthy Andrew Nemhard, or Ryan Nemhard, Ryan Nemhard, that team maybe could have beat Kansas.
They might have,
and they're a year older.
Yep, and they bring in Baylor Shireman from South Dakota State, who was the best player in the Summit by far. So, I mean, this Creighton team, holy
Final Four caliber team. It's a Final Four caliber team in the Big East this year.
It is.
Cockbrenner being back for that team is going to be huge. He's a big man in the paint that makes a difference for that team.
It does.
That leadership of having Ryan Nemhard back is going to be huge for them.
Huge. And I think Ryan Nemhard getting hurt at the end of last year and giving Trey Alexander, who's going to probably go off ball and play the 2 this year, but him having to step and play point guard, I think that was invaluable experience for him, and I think it's going to be that could be huge. A lot of things that happened last year, I think, are going to give them experience to have a crazy year.
They're going to be good this year. They're a sneaky team for me. That we're going to probably end up making a video where we're going to talk about our Final Four predictions at some point in these next coming weeks. We're going to make our Final Four predictions for before the season starts. But Creighton's definitely one of those teams that I really like.
I like them. It's fun when Creighton's good. It really is. I don't know why. I just like when Creighton's good.
8, we got the UCLA Bruins. UCLA is a team who had an all right tournament last year.
Yeah, I mean, they were probably – I mean, they're a Caleb Love. Like, Caleb Love went crazy in that second half. Back in that second half, Caleb Love doesn't do that. UCLA probably makes the Final Four. Yeah. Again, back-to-back years. So, I think this is a pretty good spot for UCLA, bringing back Tiger Campbell, Jaime Jaquez, Peyton Clark, I believe, as well. So they're bringing back enough talent mixed with Mick Cronin's style of defense. So I think 8's a good spot for them. It's a good team. Definitely probably the favorite to win the Pac-12, I would think. And UCLA is going to be fun this year.
Let's see what happens with the Bruins this year. They're going to be – I'm not going to make a prediction. I don't know what they're going to be.
It's a little tough for UCLA. It is.
We'll see. Now sitting at 7, we got the Duke Blue Devils sitting there. And now Duke's kind of one of those teams when we're writing out the AP Top 25, you get into the top 10, you can basically start slotting your teams in there. Duke's going to be around there. Kentucky's going to be around there. Kansas is going to be somewhere around there. Gonzaga, all these, North Carolina, all these teams kind of you can slot them into the top 10 somewhere. And again, they find themselves in that top 10 somewhere. But sitting at 7 this year is Duke.
And first year without Coach K.
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting. And it's a loaded Duke team again with young talent. But they got a couple old guys around too, though. They brought in Jacob Grandison from Illinois, surprisingly transferred to Duke. I'm still shocked about that one, to be honest. I don't know why he did that.
A little upset about that one.
Yeah, it was a little weird, but no. It could start slow also because John Shire, he's never, he's been assistant coach for a long time, but he's never been a head coach. So I think you could see some growing pains big time with this Duke team. But I definitely get why they're at number 7. It's Duke, ton of great freshmen, but it's gonna take time.
It's the same thing it is every single year.
It is.
They got a ton of good freshmen. They're a good team, big national brand. We'll see. We'll see what they look like. Now, this was probably one of the more interesting things we saw in the people was we got a tie here at number 5 between Kansas and Baylor. Let's tackle these two at kind of at the same time here.
Okay.
And we'll kind of preview the two front runners for the Big 12 this year. What stands out about both these teams? You can pick who you start with.
I'll start with Baylor because I think, I told Will this last night and we were talking and I told him because, Will's a big Kansas fan. Kansas is in my top 2 favorite teams as well. And, I'm like, I know you're not going to want to hear this, Will, but I think Baylor, if injuries aside, if things all work out, I think Baylor is the best team in the country. That might be kind of a hot take to some people. I think they
got banged up last year.
They got banged up.
They had a terrible matchup. That North Carolina matchup was arguably one of the worst matchups they could have got in the tournament because of the fact that when you have North Carolina and their bigs, they're so big.
Yeah.
And
Baylor
doesn't not. Baylor wasn't.
No. And especially they lost John Wachako.
They're probably not again big in the paint.
No.
So that's going to be, it's the same thing it always is for Baylor. That'll be their weakness, but they can scrap. And you put them in a shootout, you put them with a team that doesn't have a dominant big. I like Baylor's chances a lot of the time.
I think they remind me so much of their championship team from 2021 because they have a plethora of guards that are elite, a plethora. I could go through LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, Keontae George, the 5-star freshman they got. He'll probably be at the 3, but a guard type player, wing player. It is insane the perimeter talent on this team.
Yeah.
The only thing they're missing compared to that championship team is a guy like Mark Vidal. And they might not necessarily have that.
Caleb Lohner.
They did. They got BYU transfer Caleb Lohner.
That's gonna be something you'll hear a lot of. We used to little backstory when Caleb Lohner was on BYU, Zach and I would lose our minds watching Caleb Lohner play every game.
He's not very good.
But if you're looking for a guy that looks like when the ancient Romans and Greeks were making statues, you're looking for the model of what that person looked like. Look up Caleb Lohner. It's funny how freaky it looks. As an actual player, we'll see
we'll see. But this Baylor team, the sky's the limit. I could see this Baylor team easily winning it all. Not easily. It's never easy to win it all. But I could see them winning it all this year because the guard, I think they have so many guards that can score the ball.
Similarly, we got Kansas sitting at 5, tied with them, the defending national champions. There's a regime change there. You lost Ochai Agbaji, you lost Christian Brown, and you lost David McCormick. That team is gonna be different. A big key for Kansas, if Kansas is gonna have success this year, is Jalen Wilson. What does Jalen Wilson look like? Jalen Wilson, historically, and we'll base this off of what he's looked like before this year, has been a guy who is great when he decides I'm going to get to the basket.
Yep.
He can get to the basket almost at will, it seems like sometimes. He had good finish around the basket, but he would get distracted from doing that. He'd start trying to think he's a shooter. He'd start trying to pull shots from outside, and it would not go well. I think the key for this Kansas team is going to be, does Jalen Wilson figure out somehow that he's not a shooter? Get it into his head that he's not Steph Curry sitting out there behind the 3-point line, but he's got to get to the hoop. And then you look at Kansas, their backcourt. They're bringing back Dewan. Yeah, they're bringing back Dewan, who's going to be good. Dewan played some good minutes for that team. He grinded defensively. Dewan Harris might be one of the best point guards in the country.
Yeah.
He's a great defender. And I think he showed spurts where he can score. We'll see if that continues. Bringing in some great recruits here. They got some 5-stars between Grady Dick and
MJ Rice, Ernest Yuta, or I think MJ Rice was a 4-star, but Ernest Yuta, 5-star, Grady Dick, 5-star. Yeah. And then the huge transfer from Texas Tech, which Texas Tech people I know they were mad about because it kind of feels like a betrayal, to transfer from a team in your conference to a team in another team in the conference. But Kevin McCullough, he might be, along with Jalen Wilson needing to make that next step, like Will talked about. Kevin McCullough is probably maybe another if they're going to repeat as champions.
Yeah.
They're going to need Kevin McCullough to be good.
And I think they have the potential to. They do have the potential to. It's going to be a year. It's going to be a frustrating year, I think, for Kansas to start the year. And then we'll see what it turns into at the end when we're talking in March. There might be some growing pains, and there's going to be an evolution of this Kansas team. In the paint, we don't know what they're going to look like. We're looking at some projections. They're saying Zach Clements in the paint is their 5. Zach had some good moments last year. Like watching some Kansas games, there's very few people that probably have seen more Kansas basketball in the last year than you and I, Zach. He had some good moments last year, but we'll see what he actually turns into.
It's true. That's probably their weakest point is down low. But if he takes that sophomore leap that you see from Tyler, you see often, he makes that sophomore leap, then we might really start talking about Kansas as maybe a repeat champion.
Doing some damage. We'll see. Sitting at 4, we got the Kentucky Wildcats, Zach. And you and I we talked about this a little bit last night when we were talking, and a lot of it, I think, revolves around the fact that they're bringing back Oscar Tshiebwe.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a name boost as well to get them at 4. I do. I think they bring back Tshiebwe, they bring back Severe Wheeler, and they're both great players. But
how much better can Tshiebwe be? Like, how much actually better? I don't know if maybe he cleans up a few more paint garbage buckets, but there's not much room for actual growth of the play unless all of a sudden Tshiebwe decided I'm going to decide to spend the entire summer shooting threes and shooting jump shots.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why he would. There's not much more evolution for Oscar Tshiebwe as a scorer. And then Severe Wheeler, he doesn't score that much.
No, Severe can't. Maybe Tshiebwe and Severe, they got in the gym and they worked on. Well, Severe needs to probably form a 3-point shot or develop it, because the way teams would defend him would hurt their team in general, because they would sag off him so much that it hurts Tshiebwe in some ways. And Tshiebwe still did great last year, but it hurts getting to the basket some, because teams can drop their defense so much. And hopefully Severe can at least extend his range out a little bit. But they got young talent.
This is Kentucky. I was going to say that. This is Kentucky. They always got young talent. You never know what it's going to be until you start seeing that talent and what it looks like on the floor. But I think the missing Ty and the missing Kellen Grady, between those two, is going to be tough for this Kentucky team this year.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see. Well, maybe they're, and again, it's Kentucky. Maybe their recruits step up and flourish, and there's the scoring that I was just talking about is missing from this team. And if it does, then if there's someone on that team that can stretch out the defense and make them play more straight up, then Tshiebwe can eat more in the paint.
Yep.
And they can't collapse, then that all of a sudden Tshiebwe doesn't need to develop outside the paint, and Tshiebwe can just sit there and paint touch.
Yep.
But we'll see. Sitting here now, we got the top 3. Sitting at number 3, the Houston Wildcats. Houston Cougars. Cougars. That's the one I mess up all the time.
A team you normally don't see in the top 10 usually. I mean, they made it to an Elite 8 last year and a Final Four the year before, but this is kind of new territory since like the 80s, back when they had their dream decade. But man, this Houston team is good as they're good.
They're going to be good. They were a good team before injuries last year. They were a very good team before injuries last year. Kind of surprising to us almost. But they were, and they're healthy again.
Well, surprising to us that they stayed as good as they did. Because Sasser is one of my favorite players to watch, and they lose Sasser like game 9. And then they lose Tremont Mark, I think, like the next game. They're like 3rd or 4th best player, and they still do what they do.
I think now that they're healthy, what's stopping these guys from being a good team again this year and possibly a Final Four run into late March?
I could easily see it with this team. This is a well-oiled machine, honestly, at this point, what Houston is now. I think they're going to sweep through the American without much issue in their final year in the American before they move to the Big 12. But the sky's the limit for this Houston team. Number 3 is a good spot. I could even argue them above Gonzaga, actually, and to put them at 2. But 3 is a good spot for them.
Let's transition with that. You talked about Gonzaga. Gonzaga sits there at number 2. And the Gonzaga lifers seems like he's still there in George Timme.
Oh, Drew Timme?
Drew Timme.
Drew's still there. For a lot of people are like, this is Drew's 20th year, but he's back. He's probably gonna compete with Tshiebwe probably for National Player of the Year. they lose Holmgren, but I think this team might be better for not having Holmgren in some ways.
They're more equipped.
I think sometimes you have a guy as good as Holmgren. Sometimes you see, not that they didn't have an over reliance on Holmgren, but I don't know. You see more of a balanced team sometimes, and I think we're going to see that from Gonzaga. The Strawler's got to make a big step to become better this year. But Gonzaga, we've been seeing them in top 3 a lot. They're going to have a good year. Not sure if this is the year for them to win a title and break through, but
they're going to be judged off March.
They are.
That's what it's going to be. You can almost book it that they're going to win the West Coast again.
Yep.
And they're going to be probably sitting at a 1 or a 2 seed again. Come March, probably a 1.
Probably a 1. They'll probably 32-3, and then they lose in the second round. Then people are gonna be like, "Oh, it's another failure of a season."
Failure. You'll probably see it as the year goes on. People will start to buy in on Gonzaga. We fell subject to it last year. We bought in on Gonzaga, thinking maybe this is their year. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But people like Gonzaga, even if they don't win a championship, people need to understand it is very tough to win in March. It's survive in advance. So
yeah.
I think if they can get to the Sweet 16, I think it'd be obviously a down year maybe for any Gonzaga fan, but I think that's at least where they should do this year.
Now we got the number 1 team, the final team, a team that sat there, watched the Nets get cut down last year as Kansas prevailed. And is this a North Carolina team that's hungry? I feel like they let that game slip away.
They do. And some people, they're arguing too that, if Baycott doesn't, hurt his ankle at the end of the game, maybe they win. I bet a lot of North Carolina fans believe that, which I understand, that people might feel that way. But they're bringing back everybody besides Manic, and they're basically bringing in an identical player and Pete Nance to replace it. So I see they make sense at number 1 clearly, and obviously the AP agrees with it. The voters agree with it, but this team's talented.
The question with this team is going to be guard play.
Yeah.
That's going to be the question mark of taking them from a good team to an elite team.
Yep.
And taking them from potential Sweet 16, Elite 8 to a Final Four team is going to be, and even national championship team is, can those boys in the backcourt step up? Take care of the ball.
Consistent.
Yeah.
Because we saw flashes of greatness out of Love and Davis. But I'll throw out a number for you guys if you forgot, and this will pain you if you're a North Carolina fan.
I'll start with this before you say it.
Yeah.
We're watching the game last year in the championship. There's one thing that Zach continuously said during that game. It's Caleb Love is going to save Kansas in this game.
Yeah.
Fast forward, Zach, share your stat.
10 for 43. That's what Caleb Love and RJ Davis shot in that game. 10 for 43. You can't have your guards do that in a national championship game. And that's the reason Caleb Love's shot selection was as bad as I've ever seen. He's as talented as a guard as there is in the country when he's on. We saw it in the UCLA game. He single-handedly won them the game to get to them at that point. But you got to have better guard. They're talented. It isn't like Auburn where they're the talent's a little bit questionable at times. They're talented. They just got to be consistent.
Consistency is going to be the key.
And that was an issue. They were great in March up until that second half of that championship game. Then they completely fell apart. You can credit Kansas' defense as well for making some adjustments. DeJuan Harris was a menace on Caleb Love in that second half. But still, Caleb Love, RJ Davis, they're great, but they got to be consistent. And then they can win it all this year, I think.
That's going to be the key with North Carolina this year. Well, there you go, guys. That is our reactions to the AP poll. And there's our first video. It feels great to be back with you guys. We're excited to have another year going.
Yep.
To get that hype building as we're 3 weeks away, you said, from the season starting. And it's almost the greatest time to have college basketball back. Is fun. We're excited to get on this ride again with you guys. We're gonna be here all year. We're gonna start off the year. We're gonna do AP poll reactions, and as we start getting more and more bracketologies, we'll start transitioning into those from the AP polls. But to start the year, we're gonna do some AP poll reactions. We're gonna try and come out with some videos before the season actually gets going for you guys. We're gonna talk about our Final Four projections. We're gonna make some predictions of who we think the Final Four teams are going to be standing there in March this year, and maybe even who cuts down the Nets.
Yeah, we're gonna have some videos coming out. Like Will said, the next couple of months we'll probably use some AP poll. We'll react to the AP poll. Also, just have discussions probably for a while, because the bracketologies will take a little bit to get going consistently. But yeah, no, we're excited. And tell us about who you guys think. If there's any shockers for you in the comment section, if you think there's somebody you thought was really overrated, underrated. I thought the AP poll did the AP voters did a pretty good job this year. I didn't see anything that really blew my mind overall. Indiana maybe a little overrated, Kentucky maybe a hair, but nothing crazy. But tell us what you think. Comment.
Join us again, guys. Like the video, subscribe. We're excited. One last thing here, guys. Zach and I have been talking. We're looking for the team that we're going to ride with this year. Last year it was Colorado State. That was kind of the team that the show followed, that we got really invested in. We aren't set on anyone yet, guys. No. So in the comments section, feel free to make a pitch for why your team should be the show's team.
Like, if they're in the, especially if you got a team you think that is good and somewhere out west, because we live in the west, so like that's where we are right now.
Our hope is to get out to a game to go see that team, so that'd be great.
Because we want to like do some blogging, some stuff like that. So
we're still looking for other teams though. We don't need just one team. We can have multiple teams we're cheering for this year.
Yeah.
And we're a family, we're a community here at Z-Dubs. So we want that interaction with you guys. We want to build this community. So
appreciate you watching. This was a long video, I'm sure, but if you stuck around to the end, we really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll take care.
Take care.
See you guys later.